Hey everybody, here we are. It's I guess it's Wednesday in Tokyo. Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. I guess it's Tuesday evening back in good old North America. And welcome to this week's edition of the GAIJIN 50 Plus Wednesday slash Tuesday live stream. And we already got a here from Shred Edward. Hi, Shred Edward. Haven't seen you for a while. Happy show day. Happy show day to you too. Yeah, today is a national holiday in Japan, and we got Mr. Chuckles checking in from Seattle. How you doing there, Mr. Chuckles? So I wonder if Happy Show Day. I wonder if that's going to affect our attendance today. We only got a couple of people here. Um, we usually on Wednesday we get a pretty good crowd from the United States, the North America, and so Showa Day maybe is not going to be that much of a factor. Do you guys do anything special for Showa Day? I don't. I'm after having lived as a translator for over 45 years. I got out of the habit of taking holidays, taking Saturdays, taking Sundays, because translation customers need their stuff when they need it. And actually, in the past, not so well, not at all now, but in the past, when translation was at its peak, my customers, their favorite custom was to give me a pile of work going into a weekend, or going into like Golden Week, going into a long multi-day holiday, and say, have it ready by the end of the holidays. So the holidays were my golden period for working, which is, not very amenable to the beautiful human life, as they used to say. But it paid the bills, put groceries on the table. So let's get right into it. I tend to wait for a while for people to show up at the beginning of our live streams, but that doesn't seem to keep our people here, our visitors here. So let's go straight into it. Here's something that I thought was good, was cool, and this is from the Mainichi Daily News. They've got an editorial. It's easy to get into the impression that, oh, Japan doesn't care about foreigners, and Japan is trying to eliminate foreigners, and Japan is doing this, and Japan is doing that. Well, here's a little something that shows that not every Japanese person is down on foreigners or thinking negatively about foreigners. Because here's an editorial from the Mainichi English, and they're saying that Japan's higher residency fees impose excessive burdens on foreigners. Glad you noticed there, Mainichi. And as we see here, it says, for foreign nationals in Japan, their residency status is their foundation for living in this country. It is unreasonable to impose an excessive burden through administrative procedures, and the system should be reviewed. So the editorial board of the Mainichi is saying that the government shouldn't be rushing into putting on these very high fees or very high restrictions on the foreign residents that are helping to support the country and support the social insurance policies by paying their taxes and by paying their premiums. And they go into the details about what's being proposed. I think we all know that they're trying to, they are planning to raise a lot of these fees. And they say that the increase is far too steep. For people with large families, the burden will be even heavier. It could also create cases where people with low incomes are forced to give up living in Japan. They point out something I didn't know: fee reductions or exemptions are said to be possible when payment is financially difficult, but no specific standards have been presented. They say foreign nationals are also taxpayers, and they also bear the cost of public expenses. So there is also an aspect in which Japanese society benefits because foreign nationals help make up for language shortages. So, the Japanese government's saying, well, we have to raise these fees because somebody has to pay for the handling of all these foreigners. But Mainichi points out that the foreign nationals who are here also pay taxes. It's not like they're here not paying taxes and they have to, quote, pay their fair share. And this is, as of this month, the requirement for acquiring Japanese nationality has been raised to residents for 10 years or more in principle. And they are saying that change was made through administrative operation without revising the Nationality Act, which expressly stipulates 5 years or more. Well, I thought this was a good, pretty good way to go there, Mainichi. Mainichi doesn't strike me as being overly right-wing, left-wing, or whatever. But it sure seems nice that the Japanese press, at least, and some Japanese people are thinking that some of these raises in the administrative costs of visas and things like that need to be thought about more carefully or reviewed more carefully. All right. So this shows that Japan is trying to get rid of the broke foreigners. Yeah, that's what some people are saying, that Japan is trying to keep foreigners who are higher earners, higher income, people who won't be bothered by all of these higher fees, and that they're trying to change the type of foreigner who is staying in Japan. I don't know if that's an express objective. It sure seems that way, doesn't it? The way things are going. But like I said, some Japanese people see the problem here. I did a video sometime back about, that these fees are being raised, but it's not as in my video I said, well, it's not as high or unfair as it seems because it's bringing Japan in line with international standards. And I took a little pushback on that because some people who are here on the entrepreneur visa, which I guess was raised from 10 million yen to 30 million yen, and they were saying that they built a company here under the 10 million yen system, and now they have to come up with another 20 million yen in order to renew their visa in the future. And they are saying that that's going to put a very hard and very difficult pressure on them to come up with this extra money. And it may even drive them out of business. And, I could understand that as far as the entrepreneur visas are concerned. But then again, the entrepreneur visas were being abused as they were. So it's a tough nut to crack. As I said in the past, and I've said many times, maybe they had to revise the immigration system in order to avoid or eliminate some of the abuses that have been taking place. But this sudden raise to very high levels could have been handled a little bit better, I thought, like a gradual rise in the prices of visas and things like that. The fees assessed for visas may have been better, but for some reason they decided to just stick it to everybody. All right. Anything to say here? I'll open the comments here for the visa thing. We talk about visa here a little bit, quite a bit, as a matter of fact. Shred Edward, thank you. I approve this. I miss being the only gaijin in town. Okay, yeah, being the only gaijin in town must be something. That's the way I was when I was up in Tochigi. I was the only gaijin around, but it was cool. Tochigi people treated me very nicely, as far as I know. The ones that I knew there treated me very, very nicely. Had a good time there. Loved the people there. If you live in a city, even when I was down in Fukuoka, there was a time when Fukuoka was a real backwater kind of place. Like when I first got here, the Shinkansen only went down to Osaka, so Fukuoka was kind of cut off from the rest of the country. And back in those days, there were relatively few foreigners, very few gaijins in the city. I may have mentioned in the past that back then, even it's not like Japanese people would see a gaijin and stare at them. Oh, gaijin. But also the gaijins would stare at other gaijins. I had it a number of occasions where I did it too. I'd be walking down the street in downtown Fukuoka in the area called Tenjin, and you look across the street and you see another gaijin walking down the street, and a number of times I crossed the street and went on the other side of the street and said, "Hey," and flagged the gaijin down and said, "Where are you from? What are you doing?" Because it was so rare that when you saw a gaijin, you wanted to know what are you doing here and how long you been here. I asked all the typical questions that sometimes even irritated me when I was asked them, but I did the same thing about being irritated about asking questions of a foreigner. As I said in my video about going back to the United States and then coming back to Japan, there were certain things after a while that start to grate on you. They ask the same questions: where you from, how long you stay in Japan, do you like Japanese food? And I know I was irritated because I was going through that regular cycle, and I understand now that those are not such bad questions. But I had a funny experience during the time that I did go back to the States. I was out having a drink somewhere with some people, and I saw this guy come in, and he was an Asian guy. And I said to myself, "Oh yeah, okay, cool." And I walked up to him and I said, "Oh, are you Japanese?" And he goes, "No, I'm Korean." And then I realized I was doing the same thing that I thought people shouldn't do. That is, see a Westerner and right away assume that they're from the United States. So I didn't like when people did that, but I did it the exact same thing when the shoe was on the other foot. So that taught me a good lesson about human nature and about my own personality, or my own shortcomings, shall we say. There were many gaijins who would take a deep fascination with their shoes whenever coming across another one in the wild. This is true, isn't it? And there are. It happens. It happens a lot, as a matter of fact. It happens more often than not, as a matter of fact. I'll be in the neighborhood where I live, and I'll be bouncing along, and come across a gaijin, and my first instinct is to at least acknowledge somebody's existence. I'll smile and hi or something like that. But the vast majority of gaijin, if you say hi, some will respond hi. But many others will, like you said, stare at their shoes or turn the other way. I heard some gaijins say that, "Oh, I'm enjoying my life in Japan so much that I don't want other gaijins coming here and ruining it for me. So I turn away whenever I see a gaijin." I don't know if that's common, but I have heard people say that. And I think that attitude is pretty funny. Okay. Do you know many gaijins, everybody who lives here? I think I've said in the past that there was a time when I was a translator and really deep into heavy duty translator work, when I didn't know, I had no gaijin friends. I mean, zero. And it was thanks to online life that I was able to connect with gaijins in Japan. Back when I was a translator, before there was any kind of online contact, and I'm also including dial-up bulletin board services. I had no contact at all with any gaijins. All my society was 100% of my society was Japanese people. I can't say 100%. I'd say 99%. I had a few gaijin contacts through my student days at Sophia. And it wasn't that I was avoiding gaijins. It was just that I was so busy working that I didn't have a social life to speak of. And so it was after the online life started to become wider and widely spread out. I remember the BBS, the Bulletin Board Service. The first one I belonged to was something called Kanto Central, and that was the old dial up and the beep, and all that kind of stuff. And then there was another one that was more advanced called Twix, and then after that it was the internet. And since the advance of that kind of technology, my gaijin society contacts have grown quite a bit, and that includes a lot of the people here too. Mr. Chuckle says, whenever I see an Asian here in the States, I listen when they talk. I can usually determine where they're from their speech. I say hello and talk to them in Japanese if I hear Japanese. Yeah, that's the wise thing to do, isn't it? Don't make assumptions. Give them a chance to talk for a while. Listen in, and then draw your conclusions. Unfortunately, back in that day, I didn't do that. As I said, we were drinking at the time, which might have had something to do with it. And Japanese guy. So long time ago. Of course, I don't make those assumptions anymore. I was talking about back in Fukuoka. There was a time in Fukuoka, like I said, that was so cut off and so few gaijins, and like you never running into a gaijin on the street was a very surprising thing. But now in Fukuoka, like during the tourist season, you walk through Hakata Station, and you can almost hear no Japanese being spoken by the people around you. They're speaking in all kinds of different languages, including not just English, but also Chinese and Korean and things like that. It's really something after being the Fukuoka that I used to know in the past. Okay. Right. Let's go to one more. This is something. I'd be interested to know what people think about this. I have my own thoughts about it, and I'll talk about it. Sanai Takaichi, Japanese Prime Minister, made a ritual offering to Yasukuni Shrine, and China and South Korea have objected. They are mad about this, and it's understandable that those two countries get upset, and it says a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry on Tuesday objected to Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's ritual offering to Yasukuni Shrine, saying that China firmly opposes and strongly condemns her actions. The ministry also revealed it had lodged protest with the Japanese side, making claims including that the offering was a provocation against Japan's war victims. That's just a very short blurb here, but I'd like to know what everybody thinks about this. I wonder. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other about it. I think if she wants to go there and make a ritual offering, there's nothing wrong with that. And as far as, since it's a shrine, it's like the maybe like the tomb of the unknown soldier. But I know that there are war criminals enshrined there, and that's the emotional thing. And it's a hot button issue, and so I know that the things that I just said are not popular stances, but and I can, like as I said, I can see why China and South Korea would get upset about it. It's how some people object to seeing Confederate flags in the States. I personally don't have a problem with acknowledging the soldiers who gave their lives for the country. Yeah, that's true. And, another thing is, too, and this is not, oh man, I'm almost afraid to say it. This is not excusing the behavior of some bad people. But, in hindsight, we judge people about what they did during the war. And we can say that what some of those people did was pretty horrible. But I don't know that they were sitting around and maybe they should have been better administered their, they should have exerted their authority to get the military to not do what they were doing, or to stop some of these atrocities. But as we all know, that in the heat of things that are going on, like even right now, we could say, maybe somebody will see what we're doing now in the future and say, wow, those people, they're a bunch of idiots for doing that. Or they may even say that we have some responsibility for some, you never know. I'm sure that during the war, that the Japanese people, everybody in Japan, including their leaders, including the emperor, I'm sure that they weren't sitting around saying, well, let's see how many atrocities we can commit. Atrocities were committed in their name. And I think some people have paid for their atrocities, and some people who should have paid didn't pay. But the fact of the matter is that that was then, and this is now. And the people, even the people who are, the enshrining people in a place like the Yasukuni, these people were acting what they thought was in the best interests of the country, and so this is to honor their souls or something. Boy, I think I'm gonna get in big trouble. But let's see what other people have to say. I lived in Richmond, Virginia, for many years, and could never understand why it became offensive to have Confederate monuments. Many were removed. It was part of Virginia's history. There you go. Okay. I don't understand that monument removal trend either, and I think that is more social kabuki than anything else. It's like on the internet, right? Somebody says something, there's a movement, take this person down, and sometimes they're successful in taking a person down. And the objective is never to let's have a better society. It always ends up being, oh, I got myself a scalp. I exerted my power. And I think it's more of that than anything else. It's like that GAIJIN video that I did recently. The monument thing is similar. Okay, some people, evidently, I thought it would be more of a controversial topic, but it ended up that I say 99% of the people who commented agreed with me. So it ended up being pretty boring. I thought it would be more of a discussion. But you've got this word gaijin, and some people don't like it, and some people don't like other words, and I'm not saying that this applies to every band or words we shouldn't say, but for example, in the case of gaijins or about these Confederate monuments. Okay, now that the Confederate monuments are gone, has society advanced? Now that Confederate monuments are gone, is America a better place? Has it solved any problems? Has it put us anywhere that's better than what it was before the Confederate monuments were removed? People might say, well, the very presence of those Confederate monuments offended some people. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, but offense is a personal thing. It's a feeling thing. So I don't think that I wonder if this feeling should trump person's feelings should trump everything. What about the feelings of the people who wanted the? Yeah. Oh, okay. We can get into all kinds of things. Okay, I'll tell you a story. I have always been careful about telling this story. And virtue signaling. Some people feel better for themselves about themselves. Yeah, I know. I'll tell you a story, and I've hesitated to tell this story because I don't know. I never knew how it would go across. We've got different people coming in here, and I don't want to make anybody feel bad or get any wrong idea about me or anything else. But I'll tell you this story since we're all friends here, and that is one day I was at a weekend event. It was a Saturday afternoon event at a place, at a drinking place, at a live house in Fukuoka called the Chuck Wagon. It finally closed, but it was probably the longest running country western live house in Fukuoka, at least, and even compared to some of the Japanese Tokyo live houses, they had a longer history than that. And it was a special event. Certain people were there. It wasn't the place wasn't open to the public. And the Chuck Wagon used to have this sign out front, and the sign, it wasn't the main sign. It was one of these, triangular things on legs, and it was a piece of plywood. And the ladies who ran the Chuck Wagon at the time decorated this piece of plywood. They painted it red, and then they put the X, the blue X from corner to corner, and white stars along the blue X. Now, if you're familiar with that kind of thing, it resembled the Confederate flag. And being Japanese people, of course, they never thought about anything. They just, looks good. It looks South. It looks country to them. And then they made that background, and then they would post photos and announcements and flyers about upcoming events on this sign. And the sign was out in front of their shop and their place, and the place was located in Tenjin in downtown Fukuoka. And they had it out there for years and years and years. And during that event, that Saturday afternoon event, I was down there hanging out. I was the only gaijin there. And I was talking to somebody, and I turned around, and there was another gaijin talking to the owners near the front entrance. And I looked over there, and the owner called me over. She said, come here, help me out. So I went over there, and I said, hey, man, what's up? And it was an American guy, young American guy. And he said, oh, this is a nice place. Do you hang out here? And I said, yeah, sometimes I play here, and I'm also a customer here. And he says, yeah, what's going on? And he chit-chatted me for a while about the place, how long it's been here, and how long, getting to know me. And suddenly he says, the reason I came down here is because of the sign upstairs. And I said, yeah, what's that? And he said, it's offensive. And, this guy was, vanilla flavored. So I looked at him and I said, oh, and he said, yeah, he said, that it resembles, the design resembles the Confederate flag. And I said, yeah, I know that, but I'm sure they had no, like I just explained, they didn't feel anything or think of anything like that when they made the sign. And he says, yeah, I know, but still it's offensive. And I said, yeah, I don't think, I don't think that's the way they meant it. And he said, well, what if a black person was walking down the street in Fukuoka and he saw that sign? They might feel offended. And at that point, I started getting a little bit irritated with this dude. And I said to him, well, first of all, this is not the United States. This is not America. And so people don't think about those kind of things as deeply as they do in the United States. And he said, yeah, but what about a black person walking down the street in Fukuoka? And I told him, if a black person was walking down the street and took offense to that sign and came in here and talked to them about it as a black person, they might think about changing it, or because I'm sure that their objective is not to cause offense. But who are you to be? Are you a spokesman for the black people, black Americans? Are you a representative or something like that? And he says, no, no. But I think, I just, they might take offense. And finally, I just told him, I said, this is not America, and quit trying to bring that kind of stuff over here. So bye, and he left. But I always stuck with me, and this kind of going out of your way to confront people over things that I'm sure there are people who have strong feelings one way or the other, but they are feelings, okay? So let's be careful, folks. Feelings change over time, but history doesn't change. Hey, hey. And good grief, somebody is always offended about everything. It's like the internet trolls. They get offended just to scroll along by. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of the internet trolls on the channel. You don't see it because I have the comments set up in a way that when certain expressions trigger filtering, that puts them into a hold area. Sometimes comments that are not offensive at all are put in hold, and I okay them. But it catches some really bad troll behavior. And I was wondering, because suddenly the troll behavior started, and I checked it out. And right now, GAIJIN 50 channel has about 3,500 subscribers. And according to the information I found out, once you get over 3,000 subscribers, YouTube starts putting your content out to a wider and wider audience. And some of the audience that sees your content is not invested in your content. Like in the beginning, a lot of people who came to the channel were interested in Japan or Asia or what's going on over here, or visas. But when it goes out to a wider audience, some of those people, are not that emotionally invested in the topic. So they look at it and say, what a bunch of jerks. And they shoot stuff off. But generally speaking, we're able to catch them in time. And like you're correct, internet trolls are a real pain in the butt. Okay. I heard George Will say something one time, long time ago. He was talking about people who are rubbed raw by the Brillo pad of injustice. So they're super hypersensitive to everything that goes on around them, which I thought was a good way to put it. I've met a few people like that, and they never last very long. Yeah, I don't think they last very long in Japan, do they? I'll tell you another story in this regard, about people lasting in Japan, and by trying to import American, especially Western American ideals and values. And these are the same people who then run around saying, "Oh, Japan has changed." Back long ago, I used to work for a major Japanese company. I was a so-called contract employee, shokutaku shain for you Japanese wizards out there. And I was involved in hiring a teacher, an English teacher. And I was involved in the interview process. And this person was to be teaching in Shikoku. And Shikoku is, at that time, there was even no bridge connecting Shikoku to the mainland. So Shikoku is a pretty rural area. And it's a factory town, quite conservative kind of place. And this guy who was applying for the job shows up with his I guess they call them now partner. They didn't call him partner back then. They called them girlfriends. But he shows up with this young lady, and she's participated in the interview. She wanted to find out if it was a good fit for them instead of him. And so we were, I played along and I let, answered her questions. And there was one question about, she wanted to know if there was any kind of group or there was something to do with, she wanted to do some kind of social thing, women's support or, feminist kind of thing. And I said, well, that place is not the big city, and they're a little bit conservative, so I really don't know of anything like that, and I don't know how people, people might not feel, might not feel good about somebody trying to introduce something like that. And this woman says, well, they may not feel good about it, but things can change, can't they? And I sit there and said, yeah, okay, things can change. And as soon as they were out the door, I said, nope, they were not considered further for the position. So I don't like that. I don't like that very much. People trying to change Japan, whether they like it or not. Just popping in for a second, listening to your stories. You clearly have lived my life 20 years before I did. Looking for Japanese people when you are back in the wanting to have a monopoly. Yeah, monopolizing Japanese people, right? Okay. All right. I'm the gaijin status in the Japanese countryside. No gaijin in your daily life except online. Maybe these are pretty universal experiences for old Japan. And could be. Yeah, it could be. I got into the Japanese, to the gaijin expat society when I ran across a thing about the Japan Association of Translators, so-called JAT, J-A-T. And I ran across it, and it was like 2 a.m. And I was so impressed. And this is when I found out I wasn't the only one living the crazy translator life. It was 2 a.m. I was still up working, and I ran across something somewhere about the Japan Association of Translators. And in those days, we were still doing a lot by fax. So I sent a fax to the number that was provided. And I said, I'm interested in joining your organization, blah, blah, blah. And they answered within 3 minutes at 2 a.m. And I said, wow, these are my kind of people. And I found out they were a good organization. If you're interested in translation, you might look them up. Japan Association of Translators, JAT. If you're not a translator, if you're an editor or a writer or want to sort of like look into Japanese translation, there's another organization called SWET, SWEAT, and that's the Society of Writers, Editors, and Translators, and they are also active in Tokyo. Pretty good organization. If you're into that organization, networking kind of business, you might check these out. Okay, Hufanoji, I'm here but watching through the Tai Chi commercial. Sorry about that. That is one of the most obnoxious BS scam commercials I've ever seen in my life, Oh, quit weight training, and do these funky poses and you'll look like me, ripped. Yeah, as a person who has done a lot of sports and training and things like that, don't listen. Oops, another commercial. I wonder why, because I heard from people in the past that commercials were bad some months ago, and I changed the commercial setting to moderate or conservative or something like that. So there should be fewer commercials. Now, we could go 0 commercials. That's a possibility. If all I have to do is change the setting, and that will set us up, and you'll get no commercials during this live stream. But if I do that, we're not here to make a a zillion dollars, but it is nice if we can get some compensation for our time. So we could turn the commercials off, but then we would have to rely on super chats, but we never get any super chats. So I don't know what to do on that. If you have any ideas, please let me know. I figure you get some dough from them, so I watch it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your time is our tip. We get a small pittance. We're not going to be able to live off of it or anything like that, but we do get a small pittance from the commercials. I got YouTube Premium a while ago. It's been a godsend. Amen to that, Shred Edward. I guess all Edwards, the minds of all Edwards, go along the same same gutter, same line. Because I did the same thing back when my university went on break, and I knew I was and I started this channel. I knew I'd be watching a lot of YouTube, so I thought, okay, just during the university break, I'll use YouTube Prime. I get the first month free or whatever. So yeah, I'll turn it on and turn it off at the end of the break, and I just never turned it off because it is a godsend. Yes, it is, and no commercials at all. And it's it's not free. You have to pay for it, but they've got a family plan if you've got other people you want to get on there. So yeah, I highly recommend YouTube Premium if you watch a lot of YouTube. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting a lot of time. And so thank you, Huffin. Thank you, Huffin. I really like that. I watched through for Sora the Troll as well. Okay. And I don't mind the occasional ad during the live chat. Yeah, the ads are, even YouTube in general, in the past, ads were occasional, and I didn't mind them. And in fact, sometimes I saw something that I was interested in, but unfortunately, they have become very, very aggressive about ads and things like that. All right. So, Yasukuni Shrine. I thought this was going to be a more controversial topic as well. Boy, I'm losing my sense. I don't have my fingers to the pulse as closely as I thought. But here's another one, and it has to do with the similar kind of topic. And this is what they're discussing about Japan's new stance as far as defense and purchases and nuclear issues, let's say. And according to the Asahi Shimbun, nuclear subs, AI systems listed as a panel begins their security rewrite. Okay, the panel has started. They're reconsidering. Japan is reconsidering and rewriting their security policy. And it says acquiring nuclear-powered submarines, overhauling Japan's long-standing non-nuclear principles, and bolstering defense spending were some of the key proposals raised at an expert panel's first meeting on rewriting the nation's core security policies. The panel's official name, I bet you this looks really good in kanji, but when it comes to English, look out. The panel's official name is the Expert Panel for Considering Security from the Perspective of Comprehensive National Power. Wow. 15 members, 6 researchers, 3 former government officials, 4 corporate leaders, 2 media company presidents. That's the panel. So, adapting for modern war. So, learning lessons from Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East, we must advance our response to new ways of fighting and prepare for a long war, Takaichi said at the meeting. Boy, these are some words, don't you think? One goal is to create a virtuous cycle between the economy and defense. See, this is the money-making thing in Japan's arms shipments. Economic security is also on the agenda as the weaponization of the economy becomes more apparent, such as Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The biggest fiscal point is defense spending. The Takaichi administration already fast-tracked a goal to reach 2% of GDP by fiscal 2025. Now it faces a U.S. push for allies to spend 5% of GDP, 3.5 for core defense, and 1.5 for related expenses. Another contentious issue is whether to retain this current strategy's pledge to firmly maintain the three non-nuclear principles of not possessing, not producing, and not permitting the introduction of nuclear weapons in Japan. Takaichi has long argued for a review, writing in a book that the principle of not allowing nuclear weapons to be brought into the country is unrealistic when Japan relies on U.S. extended deterrence. Okay, there you have it. Japan is changing, and the only question now, changing for the better or changing for the worse? All right, Mr. Chuckles gives us a good chuckle here. Oop, 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 oop. Wow, try saying that panel name quickly many times. Yeah, isn't it so? Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Expert panel for considering security from the perspective of comprehensive national power. Reminds me of a memory test I saw on TV one time. I don't think I'll do it here. Maybe I'll do it at the end of the stream. If I remember, I'll make a note. When we go into our general discussion at the end of the stream, if I remember, I'll do it. But it's a good memory test. Very entertaining. Okay. It's basically the talk of bearing more of the defense burden in the North Pacific, since the USA is starting to feel a little shaky, like a country whose defense policy is decided in Tel Aviv. Yeah, there's that too. The United States. There was a time when I think the United States could be depended upon by Japan. And now, not so much, don't you think? The United States has shown that it will react to it will provide defense of what it seems, what it deems to be allies up to a point. And if that point is crossed, they pull back. And I think it behooves Japan to develop some kind of defensive capability, and not to do so would be a big mistake. And that they have to fend for themselves eventually. What's going to be interesting or scary is if Japan ever comes to the point where they feel that they are able to fend for themselves, and at some point America asks them or tells them or demand that they do something, and Japan goes, no, do it yourself, and be done with it. So that day may come. Okay. Some minister here years ago, IIRC, said that if Japan decided to build a nuke at breakfast, they could have it done by lunchtime. Yeah, and I've always thought that, because there's that whole thing, the two-room rule. If you have part of a nuclear device that is not a nuclear device in one room, and part of the same nuclear device that is not by itself a nuclear device in another room, you don't have a nuclear device. But when push comes to shove, you join those two things together, and suddenly you have a nuclear device. So I would imagine that that's probably true, isn't it? Okay. But I don't know. Who knows? I figure I'm far enough away from Tokyo to survive the initial blast, although I'm not sure about fallout. Yeah, Shred Edward, you're correct. Though, however, I wonder how much the Fukushima nuclear power plant thing, I wonder how much that incident served to make Japan less scared of nuclear radiation, nuclear power, and nuclear armament. Because if you remember, back at the time that it was occurring, there were some very scary reports. You know, there was a news film of an explosion at Fukushima, and there was this talk. You know, nobody could live. All this stuff, but nothing really happened, did it? I mean, still they're dealing with it, and still there is stuff, contamination underground, and they have to deal with the water, but they've released the water, so it seems to me that incident kind of creates the feeling, well, nuclear power isn't that dangerous, not what we were led to believe. I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, please let me know. But that's the take that I get out of it. I was frightened to read that the J Self-Defense Forces had recommended some war games that the U.S. War Department declined. And I wonder what the scenario was. Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting development. I always got the impression that the Americans were pushing Japan and South Korea, into taking part in war games. But Japan war games, that's another noteworthy. Do you have a link for that or something like that? Excuse me as I write this down, because I cannot do two things, chew gum and chew gum and walk at the same time. All right. Okay, Japan is simply going to give a lot of money to defense contractors, hoping to boost the economy, but in reality, it will kick in the new arms race in the region. Yeah, could be Schindler. That's of course, the cynical way of looking at it. But defense spending, that's true. That's true in all countries, isn't it? Including the U.S. I mean, the U.S. Defense spending is almost sinful the way they go about it. But it seems that nobody has come up with a good way to handle it. Because, when they say, okay, Japan's going to start all this defense spending, of course, the first place it goes is into R&D, right? Or at least some of it, a lot of it goes into research and development. And research and development is, basically paying for a dream. And so it's easy to abuse. It's not that Japan needs the U.S. to defend Japan. It's that if the U.S. weren't around, Japan would have to defend itself. That's true. Yeah, that's very true. And then there's, okay. And the political situation in the U.S. is far more shaky. So depending on their help is no longer advisable. This is a good point, too. The U.S., as we've seen in the past number of years, changes so radically when there's a change in the party involved. It's very unstable, very, very unstable, and not very, very long-term dependable. That's true. And that's true no matter whose jersey you are currently wearing. These nuclear arm claims are dangerous because it will create an incentive for neighboring countries to develop their own nukes, and South Korea is likely to be the first in line. Well, neighboring countries already have their own nukes, namely North Korea and China. And so I wonder what Japan's options are in this neighborhood. I don't know. I can't say I have an answer. I have feelings, but not many answers. Okay. Chernobyl lessons haven't been learned, unfortunately. That's true. Well, Chernobyl turned out to be a lot more terrible than Fukushima ever was. So I wish I did Gaijin 50. I'm pretty sure I'm right, though. It's one of those goldfish bowl headlines on the internet I didn't read. Oh, I wish I did Gaijin 50. Okay, I didn't read the article. Okay, I might try to find it. I might try to chase it down. I made a note of it. It would make an interesting, you know, an interesting story just to read it, or maybe do a video on it. Supposedly, there is the loose confederation of the Four Eyes, yes, or Anzac Region Defense Pact. There was something JSDF wanted to do. It got vetoed, and I wondered what it was. Okay, Anzac, that's another clue that might be able to track it down. Okay, very good. Yeah, this is a tough nut to crack, tough topic to discuss, but they are discussing it, and they are going to go in a certain direction, and we all hope and pray, being ones living here, that things go in a way that keeps things peaceful and happy and safe for all of us and our family. Okay. All right. We just did the three serious topics that I wanted to do. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find too much worth reporting on for this Wednesday live stream. Maybe it's because today's a holiday that all the reporters are taking a day off or something. But I've got some lighter stuff, some human interest. So feel free to jump in. Schindler came in here. I also find claims that learning from war in Ukraine laughable, because what's going on right there is a drone warfare, and other countries have no idea how scary it is. I agree about that. Drone warfare. You know, I read a really interesting book one time that was talking about the great advances in human civilization and human society, even things that and they were all, and it was all from the viewpoint of weapons and armaments and warfare. And it was a really interesting book. And it put forth the theory that advances in how people fought wars changed civilization, the focus or the direction of civilization, society, how society was organized. And it started out with, it was talking about people used to hit each other in heads with sticks, and then there was, the armies and their shields and the Romans, the typical thing. But then it says that one of the greatest advances in military warfare was the invention of the stirrup and the things you put your feet in when you're riding a horse, because it made riding a horse more stable and controlling of the horse more easier. It made it easier, and so mounted cavalrymen were able to fight from their horse, and their lances and their and so they said that the stirrup was what guided, was what everybody depended upon for a long time. And they may have mentioned other things too, but then the one that I remember, the next big advance was gunpowder. And as before there was bows and arrows and things like that, you needed certain kind of strong people to shoot the longbow and stuff like that. But then gunpowder, which is back to gunpowder is nothing more than throwing stones, but it allowed the individual to send a projectile for a longer distance at greater accuracy, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to explain that to you. All right, gunpowder. And they were saying that the integrated circuit, the computer chip, was the greatest advance in warfare since gunpowder, because until the computer chip, just about every weapon was a gunpowder theory based weapon, and that the strongest countries in the world were those that could afford the weapons, the gunpowder based weapons, to deliver the armaments. And they as an example, they gave like fighter jets and things like that. And they were saying then the computer chip put weapons into the hands of the individual, like shoulder fire weapons that were cost, like, let's say, just for example, $1,000, that an individual, that a goat herder in Afghanistan could use to take down a $10 million jet. And they were saying that this was such a great advance in warfare, because it gave the individual great power against these, money intensive states. And then if you follow that logic, the drones are even more of an advance. They're still computer chip related, but they put into the hands of just about anybody who wants to invest for a very low amount of money, the ability to swarm the enemy, to come in under the radar, to shoot almost like a cruise missile kind of drones that are hard to detect. So it's a very scary thing to think about, to consider. Sorry for carrying on here. And this has been true at least since World War I. Yeah, the machine gun, right? The tank. Okay. All right. All right. Comments seem to have quieted down a little bit. Let's go to the little bit of more lighthearted. Residents in Aichi City snub ordinance on smartphone use. Well, this is something that we're all dealing with. Before we get into that, let me go back to the nowadays the drones are making tanks and armored vehicles obsolete and making wars a video game like experience, dehumanizing us even more. Yeah, that's true. That's true, isn't it? I read a story during was it Afghanistan? There was something in the Middle East, and it was talking about drone pilots. And it was saying that the drone pilots, and when I'm talking about drone, I mean the big government-sponsored drones, the really highly powered and strongly weaponized major drone, like a small airplane kind of drone. Well, evidently the pilots of these drones were located in like Colorado or something like that, in a mountain somewhere. And they would come in to work in the morning. They were living like in the suburbs or on base or something like that. Wife and a child, they would finish breakfast, have their cup of coffee. See you later, dear. Do your best at school, kids. Get in their car, go to work, drive into this secure area, sit at their office, and they had a screen and they had a controller, and they would control the drone and go in and do all kinds of warlike things and bombing people and shooting people and blah, 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 and in a warlike situation. And then at the end of the shift, they would say, whoop, time to go home, get in the car, go home, kiss the wife. Hi, kids, how was school? Sit down and start watching the evening news. And it said that a lot of these guys who were doing that kind of thing had all kinds of mental problems. This switch between normal everyday home life and war, and they had a really hard time dealing with it. And that's I can understand that a bit, because I was in the military only 4 years. There are people here who have been here a lot longer, and I remember doing a lot of pretty high level work I was out on the end of the Aleutian chain, and we did a lot of you know, and it involved high tech. At the time, it was high tech. Anymore, it's laughable. But we were doing a lot of important work, and then and that was a daily thing, and there was the pressure and all that kind of stuff. And then when you're through with your tour of duty, you go. I went back to the States, went back to Chicago, the suburbs of Chicago, and spent about a month or so hanging out with my old friends, and I was immediately, I don't know, bored or let down because the life back home was just, hey, we're gonna go get some beer. That was about the extent of it. So I'm sure that these guys who do that on a daily basis have a really hard time. Okay, let's go back to our story, our Ichi story. My home prefecture, Schindler says. Okay, cool. We'll see if you're nearby here, nearby this Aichi city. And so, Toyoake City. Do you know that place? They recently drew national attention because they adopted a city ordinance urging residents, primarily children, to reduce time spent on smartphones. And, this is, one of these ordinance things. All right, this is an ordinance, non-binding ordinance. So, nobody listens. A survey conducted by the Toyoake government shows that the non-binding ordinance, which took effect in October, has not come close to generating the desired result, of course. More than 60% of junior class kindergartners, junior class means, I guess, first year. Kindergartners, a lot of them go 2 years, in the city had been exposed to smartphones and other digital devices before they turned 4, according to the survey results released March 26. And more than 20% of junior high school students are using the devices for 4 hours or longer a day. Toyoake's ordinance encourages all city citizens to limit their daily recreational smartphone use to no more than 2 hours. All citizens, 2 hours. It also calls for no smartphone use after 9 p.m. for elementary school pupils and younger children. In addition, it recommends that children from junior high school to age 17-year-olds lock their screens by 10 p.m. every day. The findings have shown the use of digital devices is spreading to younger ages at a greater extent than we ever thought, the mayor said, and we hope to step up our awareness-raising campaigns against smartphone addiction. I gotta say, I don't know about smartphones, but I'm probably, as Japanese say, SNS addicted by now. I watch my social media a lot. Okay. Okay. So, Shred Edwards got some harsh words. If anybody cares what those dullards in government think about phone usage, they have more issues than smartphone usage, right? And you've got a good point. Good point there. And Toyoka, yes, I've been there 30 minutes by train from Nagoya. Okay. Yeah, I would say that they've got more. I don't know about Toyoake. I've never been there. Maybe that's all they have. Maybe that's the only thing that they have to think about at the time. But it's those of us who have been around for a long time can remember a time when people worried about our generation and watching TV and about how it was going to screw us up and how, it's no good for the kids because they won't know how to think. They won't know how to read because they're watching TV all the time. Well, I found out, as we all found out, I think that, I can read okay. I think I can think okay, but I don't know. I don't like it when I'm on the train or in an eating place or with my family, when there's a little kid, my grandkid to be exact, just sitting there going, looking at a smart device while the grown-ups talk around them. And I don't like the way that looks, and I don't like the way that feels. But that said, it's probably better than having the kid screaming and yelling about something or knocking the water glass over. So I can understand why young parents do it and why young parents rely upon digital devices to entertain their kids in certain settings. For example, I've heard from my daughter-in-law, you take a kid on the train when the kid's in the terrible twos, can't be shut up for the life of them, and then starts screaming and yelling and carrying around and kicking and won't sit still, and then having the people around them click their tongue at the mother or say, you should discipline your child better or something like that. And anybody who's had a kid knows that there are certain ages that kids cannot be shut up no matter what you do, save for putting a plastic bag over their head. And no, I'm joking. But so when in such a situation, it would be very easy to hand them the digital pacifier, and the kid sits there on the trains and enjoys themselves playing a game or watching a YouTube video. And which is better? Which do you want? Okay, 30 minutes by train from Nagoya, Toyo. Okay. Take the kids' phones away and make them care for their Tamagotchis. Tamagotchi, is it? LOL. Tamagotchi. Yeah. You say you're dating yourself there, Mr. Chuckles. Yeah, that used to be good, but that was a digital thing too, wasn't it? Yeah. And my older son's day, the big thing among kids was the gacha. Remember the gacha? Those are like the old gumball machines. You put in some money and gacha, and you get. They didn't have the sophisticated ones that they have there now. They were much smaller, and you would most of the things that you would get from a gacha was a rubber figurine of a popular TV hero or character. But things back in those days were, and in my older son's days, they had Transformers, metal. I think he had some that were made of metal. And you would get this character and you could, open it up and twist it around and it would turn into something else. And that was, there wasn't any digital stuff. Though the small digital games like made by Casio started to come out in those days. I know because I wrote the English manuals for them. Okay. Toyoake is a regular boring city in central Japan. There's not much to do there, so I can't blame the locals for sticking to their phones. Yeah. Or the government for sticking their noses into the phones business of the locals. Maybe that's all they have to do there. Maybe they figure we got to earn our keep. But Japanese politicians are very well known to be old fuddy-duddies, aren't they? I remember there was a resistance to introduction of mobile phones into Japan when they first hit. They were pretty well widespread, like in Hong Kong and things like that. Very quickly, wow, they spread everywhere. But Japan resisted the entry and set up barriers to the entry of mobile phones at the beginning. And I heard a commentator say on a news show discussing that. He said, it's interesting. In the United States, when a new technology arrives, it seems that the focus of the United States government is how can we put this new technology into the hands of as many people as possible, while the policy of the Japanese government seems to be, how can we keep this new technology out of the hands of as many people as possible? I remember hearing that, and I laughed and said, Hmm. Okay. My grandsons like to go outside to catch Pokemon with a smartphone. I'm not seeing a problem with that. Yeah, that's cool. If kids do it outside, that's nice. What I didn't like about this Pokemon thing is when they were doing, I don't see it much anymore, but there was a while back when I don't know much about, I don't know much. I can't say I don't know. I know the name Pokemon. I don't know anything about the the social thing or the universe. But I guess they would do some Pokemon things, and you would have to go to a certain area to catch certain things, and you'd walk out of the station in certain areas, and it would be packed with people fiddling with their phones. Some people had two or three phones trying to catch their Pokemon digitally catch their Pokemon. And they'd be, they'd get in the way. It was like the GAIJIN, they complain about the foreign tourist thing. It was the same kind of thing. You're living in an area and you've got to get from point A from point B, and you're having a hard time because the Pokemon freaks are out there taking up space. It was really annoying. But like I said, I don't see it much anymore. So maybe they did something to correct that. I love how older generations love to blame video games and internet for youth problems, but in reality, they should look at themselves first. Bing bong, there you go. I mean, if the older generations had done something, done their job, or done something else, the new generation wouldn't be where it is today. So, yeah, there you go. And sometimes my wife likes to blame the internet or social media for society's ills. But I always tell, I'm always of the opinion, what are you going to do? Okay? How are you going to get that genie back in the bottle? You're going to send the police door to door and collect smartphones, or you're going to, I don't know. I mean, you can talk about it. What is it? Was it Samuel Clemens said, everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it? Yep. I still have a large metal transformer from the mid 80s, transforms from an F-15 jet into a transformer. Those were cool in the day. Yeah, they were really cool. Really hefty toys, too. You have to be careful not to drop them, it would cause your neighbors consternation. All right. Takara used to make some great Transformer toys back in the 80s and 90s. Good old times. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I think it was made by Takara. I'd like to confirm from the original package. All right. My generation was blamed for reading comic books. I guess nothing changes but the changes. Yeah. I remember comic books. Comic books would lead to this and lead to that. And yeah. And Y2K would crash airplanes and blow up the world. Remember that? Pokemon Go is on fire, but some countries got it wrong. A YouTuber in Russia got a suspended sentence for trying to catch a Pokemon at a temple. He was charged with offending the religious feelings. That was in Russia? Wow. I didn't know they had religious feelings in Russia. I thought religious feelings were against the law in Russia. I'm just joking. I'm just exposing my ignorance about what's going on in Russia. Yeah, some of those Pokemon catching thing. I don't even know what catch a Pokemon means, so maybe I'll just shut up here. Okay. All right. Anyway, we got to keep those young whippersnappers in line. All right. Yeah, remember? Hey, talking about the downfall of civilization. Remember when Elvis Presley was going to be the downfall of civilization? And so were the Beatles, too, for that matter. Okay. Papa Katsu. Papa Katsu. Nope. Papa Katsu is not a kind of pork cutlet. But Papa Katsu is going international as Japanese women aim for free spending foreign tourists. So we're going to talk about what is papakatsu, and that's what it is right there. So use your imagination. Okay, this is one of these. This is a article that's not meant to be a news article. It's meant to be entertainment. So it's got a lot of garbage in it. So papa katsu, and this is defined in Wiktionary as sugar dating. Young woman trolling for or being trolled by men old enough to be their fathers and rich enough to fog any anomalies rising from that. Sex may or may not be part of the arrangement. So that's what papakatsu is. Sugar dating. Do they give a name for why do they call it papakatsu? Well, you can look that up if you want. But it's one of these Japanese words. They take two Japanese words. Actually, one word's an imported word and a Japanese word. They shorten it and not put them together, like gaijin, right? So it seems that Japanese women are fed up with the stinginess of Japanese papas and foreign papas because they are richer or more psychologically liberated are not so stingy. Yuko, at 35, a papa katsuist for 8 years, now finds herself involved almost exclusively with foreign papas. Office worker by day, by night she goes where real life is and pursues it with gusto, making her contacts via mating apps with names like Lucy and Seeking. American hedge fund managers, Indian IT millionaires, Chinese real estate moguls, the world's freest spenders, wallets fulls, desires boundless, liberally limitless. Okay, now this, like I said, this wasn't really a news report, but it caught my eye. First of all, papakatsu. Is it, papakatsu makes it sound almost cute and harmless, but actually it may be, a form of, I don't know if I can say that word on YouTube, so I won't, but you know what I say, the world's oldest profession. And a hat tip to Shred Edward. The world's oldest profession in the world, alive and well. I am shocked. Oh, a gaijin hunting gold diggers always has been a thing. Yeah, I don't even know if they're gold diggers. It seems like, it almost seems like what you hear about happening in the Philippines quite often, or Thailand. Young women looking for an older guy and attaching herself like a mosquito until they can get what they're shooting for. Now, Schindler says, good point. Funny enough, it makes Japan way less racist too. Yeah, the world's oldest profession is an equal opportunity supplier, let's say. And then, and I wonder if they call their papakatsu, their foreign papakatsu, gaijin. Who knows? But anyway, it always amazes me when I read stories about this and about the kabukicho and about, where is that? Is it Higashi? What's that station just outside of Shinjuku? There are areas where they say that the oldest profession practitioners are lined up in the street, and it's really easy. And you could get and there are various different establishments that are very. I mean, they're not hidden. They come out and say what they are. They use a vernacular terms like Soapland or fashion massage or something like that, who are obviously selling certain kinds of services, erotic services, And then now there's this papakatsu, and this is apparently against the law. And I would say that it makes Japanese society and Japanese women in general look really bad. And I wonder sometimes why they don't try to crack down. Have they given up? Or is it more acceptable? I hear every once in a while gaijins will say, well, that type of behavior or that type of action or activity is more acceptable in Japan than it is in the West. And you shouldn't be surprised. Okubo, thank you. That's Schindler. That's where I was talking about. The name escaped me for a minute. And then they say, well, you shouldn't be trying to import. It's your Western moral upbringing, and you shouldn't, your Calvinistic worldview and stuff like that. But, in my experience, even though such services have been allowed in Japan, and such services have been even part of literature in Japan, and there were the entertainment districts, and some of them still exist unofficially, but everybody knows that they're there. That said, I find the Japanese people, especially Japanese women in general, to be more conservative, is the right word, or more chaste, or more yada kind of vibe, unless that's a put on, than the liberated Western woman. So very confusing to me. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because it'll make it sound like I'm just trying to get views on a racy subject, and that's not the point. But it is something that I've thought about for a long, long time. Okay. It's done in a very ritualistic way and generally safe. Much more than I understand is the case of adult escort in the USA. Yeah, well, they have adult escort here too. In fact, one story that I ran across that I didn't put into the docket here today was that the police arrested this guy. He called in for an escort, and they call them. They don't call them escorts really. There are, if you go online and you look on the English websites, they do call them escort services. But in Japan, I think they're often called fashion health. And that is, you can check into a hotel, dial the fashion health number, and they'll dispatch a young lady to give you a fashionable, healthy massage. And so this guy had called this lady, and she came in, and she did what she had to do, or what he had requested her to do, and he paid her. And I don't know the details, but when she got back to her dispatch company, she found that her money was missing from her little place where she had it. I don't think it was in her wallet, because there's payment mixed with her cut and stuff like that. So she probably had it in a separate little packet. And when she got back, she opened it up and it's gone. So she did what any woman of ill repute would do. She called the police. And she said, hey, police, I went to this guy's room to fashion his way to health. And my money's gone, and I think he took it. And the police went and arrested the guy. So go figure. I don't know. Maybe the guy thought that she wouldn't call the police because of her chosen profession. But they do have adult escort here. It's just that they call them fashion health. Okay, I think that's what they used to call them, at least. I may be outdated. Some Quebec guy I met here in Narita City last summer was complaining that the girls' club he had gone to was talk only for JPY 3,500. Well, yeah, it's Japan. Well, of course, for JPY 3,500. Yeah, they've got all these weird girls club, and all kinds of weird systems here. There's one that not too far from where I'm at right now, and I was wondering about it, and I looked up online. What is it? I think they call it something club, and I guess you go in and you pay, and there are girls. I don't know if they're sitting in front. It's almost like the Bangkok thing where you can see the girls sitting behind. They're on display somehow. I don't know if it's a glass or if it's online, and you pick one of the girls, and I think when you pick a girl you got to pay more, and then when you pick the girl you have a talk, and while you're talking you can make a date outside of the club, and then once they're outside of the club and you're on your date, you can negotiate what you want to do, and maybe you have to pay a date charge. You got to pay for everything as you go along. That's the kind of world we live in. But it is quite a thing. I mean, there are all kinds of services available in Japan, especially in Tokyo. No, not only in Tokyo, all over. Western women will most likely kill you for visiting places like Shinjuku, but in Japan, results may vary. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Western women. Yeah. 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 I don't want to get in. Yeah. You're right, Schindler. Let's just leave it at that. Oh, yeah. This kind of services is also called daily health. Yeah. There you go. Delivery health. When you don't even need to leave your house. I am corrected. Thank you, Schindler. I think the fashion health is in is the name of the place. What should I call him? Where there is a I don't know, you call it a shop or a place where you go and you get the health massage. That's fashion health. Daddy health, delivery health, is where they deliver the healthy massage. Okay, thank you, Schindler. And they call it Daddy health, and they also say Shucho Semmon. And Shucho means like a business trip or going out, and Semmon means only or specialty. So these are the places where they only call up and they only dispatch the girls. You can't go there and visit. Okay, learning a lot here. Japan is the only country where the sex worker can dime the John and do it on the up and up. Could be. Yeah, yeah. Is it the only country? I guess it's the only country that I know. I can't say I've been to every country. This is turning into a tutorial. Can I get a copy of the manual? Yeah. And if you become a member, we'll give you a map to, no, we won't. A map and a list of telephone numbers. No, we won't. I had a guy during the bubble. I had an American guy. I knew him at Sophia University, and he teamed up with a Chinese guy that we also knew. I say Chinese, Taiwan guy that we also knew at Sophia University, and they ended up in New York. And the Taiwan guy during the bubble started making pretty good money by handling plastic pellets. And these are plastic pellets. They're kind of like a commodity, and the price goes up and down. And companies buy these. It's almost like rice, and they buy these pellets. They would buy these pellets and melt them down and turn them into plastic goods. And he was buying and selling and on the future, doing futures, and made quite a bit of money. And they arrived in Japan during the bubble, and they said, "Well, we want to expand our operations." And this guy, this American guy, talked with me person to person, and he says, "We want to expand our business into Japan." And I said, "Yeah, okay, good luck." And I was busy translating and doing other things, but he said, "Well, what we want to do is we want to make an escort service for rich Japanese people. No, rich Americans, rich Japanese. I can't remember which is which, but they wanted to send a escort service either of rich Japanese people going to America or rich Americans going to Japan, and they wanted to make these pamphlets and telephone numbers and things like that. But they needed somebody to handle the business in Japan, and they asked me if I was interested. Of course, I didn't want to become a. Remember the Dr. Detroit movie? There was a professor, Dan Aykroyd. He couldn't say the name. He says, "Are you a?" I'm in the same thing, being on YouTube, but I didn't want to get into that kind of business, so I turned him down and never heard from them again. And now that the bubble has burst, I'm sure they're probably homeless or something like that. But yeah, if you're here long enough, all of this becomes second nature. I can imagine this Dedi Heru going over well with the neighbors. Well, basically, yeah. There have been stories where like a Dedi Heru would rent a condo and run their business out of the condo, and the neighbors would, because of the traffic, the neighbors would catch on. But Dedi Heru, see, the good thing about Dedi Heru is it's all by phone. So the workers, the women who are working there, I believe, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I believe the woman working there would be registered with the Dedi Heru, and they don't have to go to the Dedi Heru company. Everything's done by phone or by message, and they probably use encrypted messaging. And somebody calls in, I want this girl, and Dedi Heru contacts the girl, go to this hotel, this time, see the John, and she would go there and deliver the health. And I don't know how she would get the money. Would she send the money, bring the money? I don't know. But I have seen stories that some people, not Dedi Heru, but they were running fashion health out of a condo and got into trouble when the neighbors started complaining about the traffic. Simply put, if you see a place called a health club in Japan, rest assured it's about men's health. Yeah, there are health clubs. I mean, but if you live in Japan long enough, as you know, Schindler, there are certain code words that you pick up upon, right? Like Soapland and things like that. What the heck does that mean? Well, you know the story behind Soapland. They used to be called Turkish baths. And the word that they would use for Turkish bath in Japan was totoko, like they always do. They shorten things, right? Totoko. And totoko is the name of the country of Turkey, which did not appreciate that nomenclature very much at all. And so they had to come up with a new name. And so they said, okay, instead of Totoko, we'll call them Soapland. So if you want to go to a land and be soaped, that's the place to go. In most cases, neighbors don't really care if you're not making noise. True. I live in a gigantic condominium, and I really don't meet my immediate neighbors. The only time I only think about my immediate neighbors is when their kid starts crying too loud. And I'm sure they only worry about me when I start making my GAIJIN noises. The place that we most often meet is on the elevator. And half the people I meet on the elevator, I don't know who the hell they are. So, very good. Maybe in the big city, but out here in the sticks, an ambulance would be good for a week's gossip. Yeah, out in the sticks. Okay. Is this just phone sex? I don't know anything. I don't know. I guess phone sex is a thing. Is phone sex a thing in Japan? I don't know about that. Okay. All right. One more. Last one. Last light one. And after this one, we'll have our general general topic, general discussion. So please hang around. I'm sure it'll get interesting. Do you know about this? Do they do this in other countries? I've been talking about this to some of my work colleagues and I'll tell you the reason in a minute. But just a minute, I lost my cursor. Where are you, cursor? if I don't have my cursor, I can't get rid of Shred Edwards. For some reason. Nope, it's over here. Okay. I've got two screens going, and sometimes my one screen, my cursor goes off to the other screen. Now I can still see the cursor, but it's on the other screen, and I have a hard time finding it so I can click something. But anyway, Schindler answers the Daddy Health is not phone sex, but it's a health delivery to your house. Yes, an actual person shows up and delivers health to your house or hotel room or wherever you may happen to be. Okay. Greg said, I haven't been in that part of the world in 50 years. I see not much has changed except for the use of technology. Yep, you're right there. Okay. Mosquito buzz. Now, I know this is a thing in Japan, and I know that it is used, and I wonder if it's used in other countries as well. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what the mosquito buzz is. Some areas where they don't want youthful people, young people to gather in groups or hang out or, be a problem to the normies, they will play mosquito buzz noises because younger people can hear the mosquito buzz noise, but older people who lose their high frequency hearing a bit can't hear it. So young people in the area says, God, what's that noise? Get the hell out of here. But old people are sitting around, oh, what noise, So it's a kind of like a young people control technique. Now this again is not a news report. It's more like an interest. While navigating the crowds is enough to give you a headache where the mosquito noise is. Headache because there is another less obvious element at play, mosquito noise. This high-pitched frequency, similar to the buzz of a mosquito, has become a topic of discussion online in Japan, with some people saying children and young people are particularly bothered by it. I think that's the point, as it is more audible to them than those in middle age. I heard that convenience stores use that to keep kids, to keep youth elements, undesirable youth elements from hanging around in front of convenience stores. Now, I've got a story behind this, a recent story. As I've mentioned a number of times, I still am dispatched to a university to teach. And of course, I am the oldest guy in the room. And it's a room at maybe five or six people in one large room. And we all teach together. Now, because of my listening to loud music on headphones and at high volumes, my high frequency hearing is pretty shot. If you see my audio graph, it goes shaboom, right off the edge there. So I can hear sound, but I can't hear high frequency noise. And so certain spoken words that rely on high frequency sound are very difficult for me to hear. And I do have some hearing aids that boost the high frequencies that help me a lot. But the other day I was at work, and we were in preparation week. So every teacher's sitting at their desk, writing stuff and putting things, and it's all computer work. So in that case, I took out my hearing aids, put them in the case. They've got a little carrying case, a clamshell case. Put in my AirPod 2 Pros, listening to some music, going along. And all of a sudden, some younger woman, probably right around 30, from across the room, came up and she said, "Do you hear that?" And I said, hear what? And so I took off my earphone. I said, nope, I don't hear anything. She said, it's kind of like a pee kind of sound. And I said, no, it's not me. I've got, nothing on, everything, I checked everything. Nope, not me. And she says, it sounds like it's coming from over here. So then she started calling other younger people over, and they say, yeah, I hear it. I hear it. What's going on? What's going on? So then by their hearing, they were able to trace the sound to my hearing aid clamshell case. And I opened it up and I said, no, it's not coming from here. And they says, it sure is. Those things are screaming. So I shut them off so it wouldn't make noise. And I said, yeah, let me know if that ever happens again. And it has happened once after that. So I went to the hearing aid place during my break, and they said, oh, yeah, that's feedback. So evidently, hearing aids can feedback sound. It's like when you have a microphone too close to a speaker, it goes, it doesn't become like that, but it does feedback to the point that it makes a screeching sound that everybody in the room, the younger person in the room, could hear, except me. And I could not hear it at all. So this mosquito buzz is very effective. So first you have a mosquito buzz. Second, you get a whole bunch of conspiracy theories. Well, I don't know. I mean, there was a news story that said that they were, what shall I say? Convenience stores were actively actually doing that. They made an announcement. We're going to use this sound to keep, juvenile delinquents from hanging out in our parking lot. I've heard that classical music is being used to the same effect in Skid Row to discourage homeless from congregating. What if some homeless person likes classical music? Or maybe what would happen if only homeless people who like classical music started congregating there? I don't know. A lot of things to think about. So, is the buzz working? Well, that's what the buzz is around here. This person who wrote this article was saying that it's very annoying. And like I said, the convenience store operators who said they were doing that was the point. They were saying the point was to annoy young people so they wouldn't spend a lot of time there. I started thinking, is this legal? I mean, if it's causing discomfort to people, is it okay? Oop. Oh, wrong one. Okay. I think the aliens in an episode of $6 Million Man used annoying sound to keep Steve Austin from entering their underground compound. 1976 show, maybe. Yeah, it sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Yeah. Didn't they use that? Didn't the U.S. Military use that when they went into Venezuela? Didn't they have some kind of, nosebleed and all that? I may be misremembering. Not that I paid much attention. But yeah, I could see that. I know, like during the elections, when I'm walking down the street and a campaign car goes by and they blast, the campaign car speakers are right at ear level and they go, wow. And I feel my knees buckle. Maybe they should just do campaign slogans. If it was me, I'd blast Indian Christmas music. Indian Christmas. Never heard about that. Wow. Indian Christmas music. Some law enforcement agencies around the world use a similar technology to dissolve cannon. It's called an ultrasound cannon. There you go. Thank you. That or microwaves. I think all governments beam microwaves as a stealth weapon. Yeah, could be. If you ever feel your innards start boiling, you'll know what it is. Schindler says that the ultrasound cannon causes panic, fear, nausea, and headache. Yeah, I could see that. Can't you? Okay. Maybe this is part of Japan's defense spending, and they're testing the mosquito. No, that's I'm going off the reservation here. Okay, here we are. We're in free discussion now. I turn it over to you folks, our great panel of experts here. Is there anything? Oh, let me ask you a question. And this is I open up to my panel of experts here. A number of weeks ago, did a story about my first baseball game in Japan, and it flopped. It flopped so bad that I thought, well, maybe it was the way I told it, maybe it was the way I packaged it. So I reissued it under a totally different content, totally different design, totally different description. It's basically the similar topic, but it's like a totally different video. And the redo is flopping. It's flopping, almost worse than the original. And it was about my first baseball game in Japan and how there was a fight and the hot dog and the mustard and all that kind of stuff. Is that topic just so boring? I thought, many people say, oh, I really love your nostalgic old Japan stories. And that is a nostalgic old Japan story. So I can't understand why no one wants to watch it. Anybody want to? Well, thank you very much. There are some people who have commented and liked the video, and I appreciate that. And there are people who were in the comments who discussed it, but the total number of views is wow. Okay. I saw the link for the first time, and I thought, so you're the one that's not what? No, I'm only joking. Only so much time. Yes, that's always the problem. And I want to discuss something in that regard too. What do you guys think about the Twitter introducing automatic translation? It's caused quite a bonding between Americans and Japanese. Yeah. That's let me answer one more question about the video there. Shred Edward, I'll be back at you. That story was awesome. Thank you. I told my Japanese wife about the details. Her old man is from Kyushu, so she said it tracked. I love it. Thank you, Patrick. That makes me feel better. I was thinking, to tell you the truth, I was thinking seriously about deleting that video because it was doing so badly. But I guess like my mama used to say, to each his own. So I'll just I got to get more in that. I'm still building my channel, so every video is like a piece of me being like one of my children being put out there. And when one of my children is rejected, I feel so bad, So I got to become an old YouTube hand where I put the video out there and don't worry that much about how it performs. If it performs well, good. If it doesn't perform well, I'll look for the video. I totally love going to Japanese baseball games when I visit. I wish people would get involved here at the games. Yeah, okay, good. Oh, you mean the singing, the dancing. I heard recently that the Hanshin Tigers I think it was the Hanshin Tigers, are bringing back the singing balloons that there was a time when, I guess the seventh inning or halfway through the game, they have these balloons that they blow up. The balloons have like sirens on them. And when they get the signal, everybody releases a balloon and it causes, and it was always really cool. And they quit doing it. Was it COVID or something like that? But they brought it back. Okay. Please do, Mr. Chuckles. I would hope you do. I could see the chaos unfolding. The Blue Moon Unit shit got real when the tall boy sake. Yeah, that tall boy sake bottle, 1.8 liters. We used to call that, or milliliters. We used to call that a combat jug. Oh, get a combat jug of sake, and literally end over end, flew over my head. That's when I said, "What? This ain't Wrigley Field." Okay. Schindler says he liked the video too, but maybe it has something to do with how modern audiences see Japan. They expect either some wacky stuff or something about special places to visit. Okay. I won't think about it that much. Thank you very much, guys. Your responses are appreciated. Let's go back to an older video. And this is a good question. The X Twitter introducing automatic translation. It's caused quite a bonding between American and Japanese people. I read about that. And in fact, I went out and created a GAIJIN 50 plus X Twitter account, though I haven't done much with it yet. I am thinking of doing, as our friend Hufen OG says, there's only so much time in the day. And it's the story I saw said that Japanese people now get automatic when their account is identified as a Japanese person's account. If they look at an English, what do they call them now? It's not a tweet, X message. It's automatically translated into their language. And that it's caused quite a bit of bonding, like you said, between American and Japanese people, and which is good. Great. More power to them. Maybe maybe we could settle some of this this GAIJIN stuff down. I mean the GAIJIN, but foreign visitors. Okay. Anybody else want to comment on this? I think it's great. I like I said, I'm going to pursue X a little bit to see how it works out. I'm trying to think about how to do it. And in that regard, since I'm thinking about spending more time promoting the channel, it has brought me to one of the big questions that I wanted to ask. We only have 7 people left, so I think people are already starting to bail since we're reaching the end here. But this is a question that I'm going to ask here, and I maybe ask it again in on Saturday, doing two live streams a week on Wednesday and Saturday. And Japan, there's news in Japan, and I'm wondering if there's enough news in Japan to support a twice a week live stream. I'm wondering, and by twice a week live stream, I mean a full blown live stream. That is where I get on and I talk for an hour or so. And that is, I'm wondering if I should do a once a week live stream and then do pop-up live streams for individual stories that are important or time sensitive. So I'm wondering what everybody thinks about that. And I haven't decided what to do. I'm just thinking if I cut one of the live streams, it'll give me more time to create quality videos. But I tell you the truth, I love doing live streams more than I love doing videos. But live streams don't pay anything. The income on live streams is minuscule compared to videos. So I'd like to know what you think. My bad. Just do one a week. Timothy Langley does one show a week. Then yes, cut brief throughout the week ones. Yeah, cut brief throughout the week ones. Yeah, actually, that's what I'm thinking of. So I'm doing now Wednesday and Saturday. Then that becomes once a week. What day a week? What day a week? This one was started specifically to cater to North American viewers, because the Saturday live stream hits North America like 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning. Should I be thinking about the North American viewers, or should I be scheduling for the sake of Japanese viewers? So if you'd like to pine in on that, maybe I'll do a pinned comment to this live stream and you can reply there if you like. We've on the auto translation. Auto translation is only so good. Last time I rented a car in Japan, Google Maps read a lot of kanji as Chinese. Haven't figured out how to force Japanese. Yeah, that'll happen. That'll happen unless they know that it is Japanese. Yeah, AI. You guys know if you like baseball, you know that Murakami is really shaking things up in Chicagoland with the Chicago White Sox, hitting, basically a home run a day or something like that. Really, really, really got things excited. And I was having a discussion with AI about that. And I said, wow, AI is Murakami is really shaking things up in Chicago. And he says, well, hold your horses there. He's not there yet. He's still playing with the Yakult Swallows. What? Talk about hallucination. So watch out for AI and stuff like that. Okay. I like your live stream on Wednesdays. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa, and I'm going to send you an email later, Lisa. Not this week, maybe next week we can get together. Okay. And then Shred Edward, it's like suffering from Paris syndrome. You have an idea of Paris being romantic, but X is showing the less romantic side to the world. Yeah. X is X. I for the life of me, even from the Twitter days, I have not found a way to be comfortable on X. I get on there and I don't know what to do. Do I subscribe? The only thing I'm successful at, I was successful at on Twitter and maybe on X, was getting messages from really good looking women telling me that they saw my profile and they're interested in hooking up with me. I haven't hooked up yet, but, temptation. No, it's not. I'm joking. Once a week would be nice. We could have more topics. Yeah, that's the big thing. That's the big thing. I didn't care about mosquito noise or things like that. But if I didn't include those other topics, I only would have had 3. And then I could have done a shorter live stream. Yeah, I know you would. I prefer Wednesday since my weekends are busy. Yeah, and it hits your time frame right, doesn't it? And Lisa says you're very good. Thank you, Lisa. Talkback Radio. I used to love listening to this kind of thing on radio in Australia as a kid. Yeah, I grew up in the radio age. If you ever, I still have some of those my old audio podcast days. I tried to make it sound like AM radio in the United States in Chicago where I grew up. I used to channel people like Dick Biondi and Ron Britton and Larry Lujak. Hello, all you Tula babes and Chico buddy buddies. Man, I used to love that kind of, and I tried to make my audio podcast sound like that to some with some success. And I wonder if folks residing in Japan will be available on Wednesdays. Yeah, that's the question too. That's the question too. And in that regard, I'm going to be asking about this same topic on Saturday. So, okay. Wolfman Jack, man, that guy was good. Yeah, I liked him. And I'm the funniest Wolfman Jack. The funniest Wolfman Jack joke I ever heard. He was talking to somebody and he was saying that he and his wife were visiting this marriage counselor and to try to patch up their marriage. And the marriage counselor says, well, have you ever considered thinking more in terms of mutual satisfaction? And Wolfman Jack said, no, I got State Farm, which I always thought was one of the funniest jokes I ever heard. I was a kid at the time that I heard it, but I thought it was great. Live streams remind me of 20th century radio too. Yeah, I like it. And I like doing it. I like I said, When I get on a video, I think it has to be perfect because it's recorded and you could back, you know what I mean? And you've got this, I don't do a script because the script makes me feel too wooden. So I do these bullet points and I feel I have to follow the bullet points because if I skip one, oh no, and if I say too much, it sounds bad. But when you're live, you don't have to worry about things like that. You just talk. So I should do my videos like that, but I can't. I was an analyst for a number of years in the military, and I still got that analytical brain. If I have time to think, I tend to think too much. What they call paralysis by analysis. Okay, on that, we're over 2 hours again. Oh, I love this. Some live streamers do all day live streams. I want to try that someday, not on a regular basis, but if given some opportunity for some reason, I'd like to try a 8-hour live stream or a 6-hour live stream. Might be fun, but I wonder how long I would be able to maintain it. Thank you everybody for coming. Today is Showa Day. I'll be going out today to see a music performance by a friend of mine. And I'm glad all of you came, and it's nice to talk to all of you. And some of you I'll see again on Saturday. Everybody else, I'll see you on Wednesday. Lisa Schultz, I'll drop you a line soon. And thank you for everybody for being here. Please support the channel. Let me play my banner. I got to remind everybody. I always forget. And this will play for a while. Yeah, happy Showa Day to you, everyone. And we'll see all of you in the next one. Thank you, everybody. See you at the next live stream or next video. Bye-bye.